Good afternoon, and welcome to the National Press Club. My name is Gil Klein, and I was the club president in 1994 when we launched the Kalb Report series. We are here to celebrate the Kalb Report, a unique experience in the club's 115-year history, and to bring to a conclusion its remarkable run of 28 years and 103 programs. As someone who has been closely involved from the start, I can tell you that each program was inspired by Marvin, executive producer Mike Freedman, and an extraordinary team of professionals and aspiring journalists from some of the nation's finest schools of journalism. My role was to bring the audience to order, just as I have done, and say, since this program is being recorded, please don't get up once we begin. If you have to go, go now. And please silence your cell phones, or if you want, turn them to stun. It's more fun that way. And that corny line got a laugh every time, as it has today. And so, first up, we would like to recognize Ed Kelly, who is today representing Oklahoma-based Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, which has underwritten the Kalb Report series for nearly 2 decades. Ed, will you please stand? Ed is also a longtime National Press Club member, dating back to his days as a Washington correspondent for the Daily Oklahoman. Today, he is Dean of the University of Oklahoma's Gaylord College of Journalism and Mass Communication, and he hired me to be resident director of the Washington Journalism Program, so he's a heck of a guy. Next up, I would like to introduce Bill McCarron, the executive director of the club, to say a few words of introduction.
Hi, welcome everybody. I wanted to say a little bit about Mike and Marvin and about what it's like to be on the staff at the National Press Club for this kind of wonderful and remarkable program. So we're so lucky to have Marvin be part of this. So many great attributes, his journalistic ability, great head of hair. He's really tall, you know. But I think the thing for us at the Press Club that was really so overall attractive about having Marvin be a central part of these programs was, he has a client relationship with the truth. This is very important to us and is rare in Washington. So this program, Marvin, they don't have ratings, they don't have advertisers, they are just trying to get great people to come in and answer Marvin's questions. And for the life of me, I can't figure out why people agreed to do that, but we were the beneficiaries. And so Marvin was made great in this role by having a great partnership with Mike. You can applaud. In some ways, not as tall, but Mike had a genius for inclusion, and this Kalb project had more partners than anything since the Gulf War Coalition, right? And yet every partner, and we were a partner, felt like they were central to the project. And this is Mike's genius, among other things. I just wanted to say that this is Mike Freedman's side job. You know, there's 240 people here today on a Saturday. Mike has a real job. He has his other job. One year he was the president of the National Press Club, so he had that job. And he has this job. And I just, like, we wouldn't draw this kind of crowd for somebody else's, extra project, right? But this is really quite remarkable. I would just say that as part of the Press Club team, being around the meetings when things started and being part of it no matter whether we were setting the chairs or vacuuming or making the food or running camera 1, 2, 3, 4. We were in support and we were close to what was going on. And what was super attractive about that is the Kalb Report in the end, I decided, is not about the role of the press in a democracy. That's the theme. But the Kalb Report, if you work close to it, is about excellence. And you felt it. And Marvin, brought that from Ed Murrow. And Mike brought that from CBS with them and infused it in the team. And we felt it all the way down on the press club staff side. So it's great to be part of that. So client relationship with the truth, inclusive genius, excellence. These are the hallmarks of the Kalb Report. This is its legacy, and we are grateful to have been part of it. Thank you. Going back to my friend and doppelganger, Gil Klein.
That's the truth. And now it's my pleasure to introduce the 116th president of the National Press Club, the managing editor of standards and training at Axios, Eileen O'Reilly.
Hi. Welcome to the National Press Club, the place where news happens. As Gil just mentioned, I'm Eileen O'Reilly. I'm a managing editor at Axios in charge of our standards and training, and the 116th president of the National Press Club. On behalf of our 3,000 members, I wanted to welcome all of you here to celebrate one of the greatest collaborations in the history of the Press Club, the Kalb Report. Members so loved to gather in this great ballroom to see the leaders and prominent public figures of the day face one of the greatest journalists of all time, the legendary Marvin Kalb. It was so special and entertaining, and if you were a journalist, it was a real treat to watch. Marvin has such a wonderful style and wit, but his questions were always very sharp, precise, and strategic. Every single person in the room was able to enjoy the experience, while at the same time thinking, thank God he's not asking me those questions. It was like watching the ballet, if that ballet might suddenly end as a car wreck. Marvin made the mighty squirm, and it was delightful to watch. And Marvin is one of us. He is a member of the National Press Club and the 2006 recipient of the Fourth Estate Award, which is our highest honor. His journalism continues to inspire all of us, and we are deeply grateful for all he's done to illuminate and educate the world with his important conversations. I'm so glad he's here today to celebrate with us. Thank you.
So, thank you, Eileen and Bill. And now let me take you back to the year 1994. When I ran for club president that year, I promised to create a regular media affairs television program at the club. Only one problem. I had no idea how to do it. I had no money to pay for it. I had no headliner to run it. And so by May, things didn't look good. Then, like a fairy godmother, Jan Duplain invited me to meet Marvin Kalb and Mike Freedman. Marvin was on sabbatical from Harvard University's Shorenstein Center on Media, Politics, and Public Policy. And he was teaching at George Washington University. Mike worked closely with GW President Stephen Joel Trachtenberg. Over lunch, Marvin and Mike outlined a plan to produce 9 broadcast forums about the intersection of the press and public policy, 1 a month, during the upcoming academic year. GW would provide Marvin, Mike, and funding. They asked me if I was interested in their joining forces with the press club. They were taken aback when I said yes, practically, before my next mouthful. Well, duh. Talent, energy, know-how, and money were dropped on my plate like a press club crab cake, ready to be gobbled up. This was going to happen. Before our first program in September 29th, 1994, I learned just how good Mike was in organizing something this complex and how highly respected Marvin was with so many leading people in media, academia, politics, and government who made up our first panel. And by the time we finished all 9 programs, we realized we had created something of lasting value. Mike secured the funding for a second season, as well as new media partners, and along the way, including NPR, SiriusXM Satellite Radio, Federal News Radio, News Channel 8, Oklahoma Public Television, Maryland Public Television, and Maryland Public Television and American Public Television, and the rest, as they say, is history. Being associated with this production has been one of the highlights of my career, and I would like to thank Mike and Marvin for bringing me along for the ride. Now we hope you will enjoy this retrospective of some of the most memorable moments of the past 28 years.
The Kalb Report is funded by a grant from the Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation. From the National Press Club in Washington, D.C., this is the Kalb Report with Marvin Kalb.
Over the course of the past 3 decades, the Kalb Report series has engaged top journalists and industry leaders in more than 100 substantive, insightful, respectful, entertaining, and uninterrupted conversations that have helped burnish our understanding of and respect for the vital role of the press in our democracy. Today, we celebrate moderator Marvin Kalb, executive producer Michael Freedman, and all of those who have contributed to the success of this powerful series.
If you had to pick one freedom that is the most essential to the functioning of a democracy, it has to be freedom of speech.
Do you feel we could have endured as a democracy from then to now without a free press? What do you think, Justice Ginsburg?
I don't think so. I think the press has played a tremendously important role as watchdog over what the government is doing.
Walter, do you have any concerns when you look back at where journalism seems to be heading these days, that some people in a state government or a national government will sit back one day and say, you know, those reporters can't get it straight. They need help. We've got to either legislate we're doing it in their best interest, mind you, but we have to legislate ways in which they can function because clearly they've lost their way. Is this a concern that you have, given the state of journalism today?
It would only be a concern if I thought that our democracy was already crumbling away, that our judicial process had been itself impeached, if you please, by the appointments made by a series of administrations so that the Supreme Court was totally unbalanced. So it's conceivable it could happen. But if it happens, the country's gone. If that happens, we're finished as a democracy.
Congressman, you once said that the civil rights movement without the media would be like a bird without wings. What did you mean?
Without the media,
without, especially in the American South, without reporters with that pencil and pen, without the photographer, without the cameras, to bring the message into the living rooms, so people could see it, so people can feel it.
We have, Democrats and Republicans and libertarians, whatever.
But the other networks have
Well, I think they just
both
have
sides as well.
They tend to be Democrats.
They tend to be Democrats.
Yeah, come on, let's be honest about it.
If God were a journalist, what story would really absorb him today?
Ask him.
You've got better contacts, so you do that.
How do you know?
And you were the first female reporter anchor at 60 Minutes. What was it like then?
I knew I was in trouble when the entire group of the 60 Minutes correspondent walked down the hall on something really important and said, here's what we're going to do, and ended it in the men's room.
I really believe, had I been born in an era before Marconi, before Sarnoff, I would have been a ward of the state. Because I have no discernible abilities of any kind, other than to yak for fun and profit.
You make a lot of money?
Yes, Marvin, I do.
Tell me, when was the first time that you were paid to speak into a microphone?
It was in 1952. I was a ticket agent at a Continental Trailways bus depot in Victoria, Texas. And one of my duties was to call the buses on the PA system like this. May I have your attention, please? This is your last call for Continental Trailways, 8:10 p.m. Silverside's air-conditioned through-liner to Houston, now leaving from lane 1 for Inez, Edna, Ganedo, Louise, El Campo, Pierce, Wharton, Hungerford, Kendleton, Beasley, Rosenberg, Richmond, Sugar Land, Stafford, Missouri City, and Houston. All aboard!
Are we indeed in a period of decline?
No.
Why do you say that?
Well, first of all, bad news is always more appealing to the readers and to the viewers of television than good news.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we also have to understand there was no perfect time past. I hear people on talk shows saying, oh, you have to remember that was a simpler time. No, it was not. There never was a simpler time. We have always been facing calamity.
I know for more than 60 years in this business that when we have a free press, we have an excellent chance of retaining our democracy. And that's it for now. I'm Marvin Kalb, and as Ed Murrow used to say many years ago, good night and good luck.
That was just amazing. And my hat's off. I know how much work that took. My hat's off to all the people who went into the production. What a powerful lineup of guests and observations on democracy and the press. Now, the Kalb Report has been honored many times over the years, but today is extra special. Please join me in welcoming Rose Anderson, Senior Vice President and Executive Director of the New York Festival's International Broadcast Awards. Rose, the podium is yours.
Wow. So on Tuesday night, New York Festivals presented our 2023 Storytellers Gala, streamed virtually, as we saluted the work of filmmakers and journalists from 42 countries. Among them, journalists and filmmakers who work in places where they no longer enjoy freedom of speech or freedom of the press. The first award of the night was the Lifetime Achievement Award for the Kalb Report. And so, to be here today, together with all of you in this place, has a special resonance. Over the years, as you know, the Kalb Report has earned multiple competitive awards from the juries of New York Festival's Radio Awards, including 3 golds, and culminating with the 2012 Grand Award for their 9/11 10-year anniversary program, featuring the network anchors who reported live, covering the events of that day. Being trained as a broadcast journalist myself, I'm familiar with the meaning of the term network quality. For over a decade, New York Festivals has recognized some of the driving forces in the broadcast industry. Hands-on leaders with the body of work that has made a lasting impression with our Lifetime Achievement Award. While trends come and go, excellence never goes out of style. The Kalb Report has been a must-see event for nearly 3 decades and has created a legacy which will inspire journalists for years to come. If journalism is the first rough draft of history, the Kalb Report is a masterpiece with no need for an editor. And so it is a deep and heartfelt pleasure to be able to give the 2023 New York Festival's Lifetime Achievement Award to this exemplary team of men and women, to the Kalb Report. Bravo.
Thank you so much, Rose, and thank you to the New York Festivals for honoring the Kalb Report series with this very meaningful award. And good afternoon to all of you. I'm Heather Date, Senior Producer of the Kalb Report and Vice President for Communications and Engagement at University of Maryland Global Campus. About 30 years ago, when Gil was becoming president of the Press Club, enjoying the first crab cakes of your time, I asked my dad to take me to my local library in my hometown of Bridgewater, Massachusetts. I had decided I wanted to go to college, which was not a given in my family. My mom had not had the opportunity to go to college, and my dad served in the Navy and earned his bachelor's degree after many years of studying nights and weekends. My dad loved my idea. He grabbed his crossword and a paperback and drove me downtown to the library and pointed me in the direction of the reference books so I could do some research and choose a college. I pored over the heavy, thick reference books with those tissue-thin pages of dense data, and I set my sights on attending George Washington University, just a few blocks from here, to study political communication. During my sophomore year in 1995, I found my way here to the National Press Club, to this ballroom, to a taping of the Kalb Report. I didn't know it then, but I most certainly know it now. After 28 years and more than 100 programs with this wonderful team, I had found a home away from home, a place where I could learn and eventually give back. One of the things that makes a home, of course, is the people in it. My son is beginning his own college search right now. They don't use those big books anymore. My daughter, just a few years behind that, and my sincere hope is that they will be fortunate enough to find the kinds of people I have had the privilege of working alongside on the series through the years. We would like to recognize several of these treasured teammates who have worked tirelessly through the decades to bring you the Kalb Report. Dick Golden, we'd like to start with you. Would you please stand? Thank you. You may know Dick Golden as the voice of American Jazz on Sirius XM satellite radio, and I'm not kidding, it was on in my car this morning. I didn't even tune the channel, it was on. We know him as the voice of our series, our announcer, and the producer of the radio version of our programs. We are grateful to Dick for the hundreds of hours he has devoted behind the scenes to bring our program to listeners across the country, and for the care and kindness he has shown all of our student volunteers through the years. Our sincere thanks to you, Dick. Next is Bob Ludwig. Bob, please stand. Bob helped produce our programs. I love all the applause for all of you. Bob helped produce our programs in the earliest years of our series and warmly welcomed me to the team when I was a GW student. Bob is one of the best media relations professionals in the city, often securing C-SPAN and other coverage of our program, expanding visibility of our forums, particularly with newsmakers here in Washington. We are grateful to Bob for his expertise, his steady presence, and of course, his good humor. Thank you, Bob. Matt Saunders at the last minute couldn't be with us today. I hope he's watching from his living room back home. He served as general manager of GW's student-run radio station, WRGW, and earned a coveted spot as a presidential administrative fellow with the university. He was assigned full-time to the Kalb Report shortly after American Public Television began distributing our programs. I am still so grateful for his production expertise as we poured through all of the technical specifications and requirements of the public TV world. He moved to New York and has built a career in product management for organizations including Marvel, Disney, and currently Fubo TV. Thank you, Matt. Megan Calnan joined our team at a critical juncture. Mike had just established a new, Mike had just established a new Global Media Institute at GW to explore the evolving roles and responsibilities of the press in our society, and the Kalb Report was our centerpiece project. Megan was our first hire. I recall vividly how she had to pull over on I-95 South to take our call, offering her the job. She eventually made it safely to Washington and helped get the Institute up and running. She created and maintained our social media presence at a time when more and more public television stations began airing the show. Megan, who now leads brand storytelling and communications for National Geographic, please know how thankful we are to you for your talent and also for bringing the most positive, can-do attitude to everything you do at every turn. Thank you, Megan. Our next recruit was Lindsay Underwood. Lindsay was a talented student in one of Mike's classes, and there were many talented students. She was one of the very special ones, and we recruited her to serve as a production assistant for the program. Lindsay is a thoughtful writer, researcher, and event professional, and went on to work for the National Press Club, and now works for Harvard's Shorenstein Center as a communications manager. Lindsay is accompanied by her mom today, Suzanne, who's one of our biggest supporters. Thank you, Suzanne. Lindsay is one of the team's longest serving members, and we're grateful for her creativity and dedication. Thank you, Lindsay. You can find the Kalb Report series online at thekalbreport.org because of Brian Kane. We found Brian in GW School of Engineering. He was looking for an on-campus job, and we needed a website to host our growing archive of programs. He came to the office to interview with Megan and me, and Mike had gotten a gumball stuck in a gumball machine that he was planning to give as a holiday gift. As many of you know, Mike is a very creative gift giver. He, of course, asked Brian for his help, and naturally, given his engineering background, Brian was able to rescue the gumball, restore the machine, and generally save the day. That started a 12-year, very successful run as web editor for the Kalb Report. Brian is now a software engineer in San Francisco, building things even bigger than gumball machines and websites, and we are so thankful for his important work on the series. So thank you, Brian. In order to host an in-person event for an audience of 500 plus, record a radio program, produce a television program, and offer a webcast all at the same time, you need Tina Creek. The Kalb Report was a hybrid experience before anyone knew what a hybrid experience was. Thank you, Tina, and thanks to Scott and your team at the Broadcast Operations Center for the way you consider and balance every detail in and beyond the control room. We want to offer a very special thanks and recognition to Kat Bug, Avi Feinberg, and Chip Casano. Kat and Chip are with us today. These are our colleagues at University of Maryland Global Campus. Their collaboration and support, both in our day jobs and at UMGC and for this series, along with their friendship, means the world to us. Thank you, Kat and Chip. We wouldn't be a team, of course, without our dear colleague and esteemed moderator, Marvin Kalb. The last of the Morrow Boys, Marvin brought the tradition of journalism to new generations through this series. As you saw, from Supreme Court justices to media moguls and legendary television anchors, all more accustomed to asking questions than answering them, Marvin's signature interview style gave us a special peek inside the minds of some of the world's most prominent figures in media and politics. One of Marvin's not-so-secret weapons was his beloved brother, Bernie. I had the great privilege of producing for both of the Kalb brothers, Bernie on the show Reliable Sources while we worked together at CNN, and Marvin on this series. The love and respect between the Kalb brothers is to be admired. Thank you, Marvin, for what you've taught me about journalism and about family, and for the great privilege of collaborating with you. On a final note, this all started because of Mike Freedman's vision. He saw value in a series of conversations about the press and our democracy, and he made it happen. He saw value in producing these before an audience of students and press club members, and he made it happen. He saw the potential to grow the series to local radio and television, and made it happen. He saw the potential to expand even further to national radio and eventually a national television audience, and he made that happen too. I often say that Mike is trying to save journalism one crazy idea at a time. Mike sees yes when everyone else thinks no. He sees boundless possibilities in ideas, and he sees unlimited potential in people. His vision and the collective nurturing of it is what has made this an achievement of a lifetime. Mike's passion for broadcasting and journalism began when he was a kid in Michigan. He would fall asleep listening to Tigers games on his transistor radio under his pillow. He went on to become a radio reporter and anchor in Detroit, and eventually served as general manager of CBS Radio Network in New York. Mike generously shares his experiences as a journalist by serving as a professor at GW, mentoring and inspiring new generations of reporters. He was elected by his peers to serve as president of the National Press Club as the pandemic hit, and he led the club through uncertain times. He currently serves as senior vice president of communications and journalist in residence at University of Maryland Global Campus. His career has been impressive and meaningful. Since introducing myself to Mike Freedman in this room at the Kalb Report taping back in 1995, I've been fortunate to work closely with him on a daily basis for more than a quarter of a century and the majority of my lifetime. He means so much to me, and I know he means the world to each and every one of you. Mike, I hope you can see in this room the difference you have made through this work. Thank you for bringing this team together And thank you for the opportunity to partner with you on the Kalb Report and for all of our adventures. Bye.
Wow. It's been a little bit more than 3 years since I've actually seen many of the people in this room. On January 18th of 2020, when I was inaugurated as the president of the National Press Club. And I just want to say what a pleasure it is to see all of you, to be able to say thank you to all of you, to say hello to all of you. It's been a long time. It's been my hope that we would all have at least one more opportunity to come together here at our home, the National Press Club, and to see Marvin Kalb on this stage one more time. And we get our wish today, which was really nice. So thank you, Heather, for your very kind words, for devoting nearly 3 decades of your professional life to our series, and for your friendship, which will endure forever. Thank you to the wonderful Rose Anderson and all of those associated with the New York festivals. We are deeply touched, most gratified, and humbled by this honor. Thank you. Our thanks also to Bob Ross and Inasmuch Foundation, the parent organization of Ethics and Excellence in Journalism Foundation, for your unconditional support, and now for making it possible for us to digitize the entire Kalb Report archive, which we will do over the next 2 years, so it will be available for educational and research purposes going forward. That has been a dream of Marvin's, and we're pleased to deliver on that for you. To Maryland Public Television, we thank you, our presenting station of the last several years. What a privilege it has been to be part of this family of consummate professionals. To American Public Television, which has distributed our series nationally, and as you heard earlier, to our other media partners over the years, including NPR, SiriusXM Satellite Radio, and both Federal News Radio and News Channel 8 here in Washington, D.C. To our partner institutions in higher education, including the Shorenstein Center at Harvard, University of Maryland Global Campus, the George Washington University School of Media and Public Affairs, and the Gaylord College of Journalism at the University of Oklahoma. To our senior producer, Heather Date, and our superb staff, which over the years has included directors Robert Vitarelli, who incidentally was Walter Cronkite's favorite director at CBS News, Shelley Schwartz, who was Vitt's handpicked successor, and to the multi-talented Scott Graham, who ensured network quality through the pandemic. To Tina Creek and her wonderful team at the National Press Club Broadcast Operations Center, under the overall direction of the extraordinary Bill McCarran. Bill, thank you. To the hundreds of college students who have worked on our series, many of whom are now well along in their own journalism careers. In fact, one of the most heartfelt comments that we've received over the years came from a college student who told us after a program, "I came in thinking I wanted to go into journalism. I left knowing I must go into journalism." Special thanks to a couple of people who could not be with us today, but who are tuning in via a live stream. Casey Murrow, the son of Edward R. Murrow, who has appeared on several of our most memorable broadcasts entitled Why Murrow Matters. And George Washington University President Emeritus Stephen Joel Trachtenberg, the person who brought Marvin and me together and effectively said, "Let's put on a show." And finally, thanks to my beautiful wife, Renee, and our family, all of whom are here today, for their support, their love, and their encouragement over these many years. By honoring the best of the best, each year the New York Festivals cast an important spotlight on quality and class and serves to inspire new generations of broadcasters and journalists. In honoring us in the twilight of our series, our hope is that those who follow will equate lifetime achievement with having the courage of your convictions and always seeking to make a positive difference in our world. And now, as I have most proudly said at the start of 103 programs, it is my pleasure to introduce the last correspondent personally hired by Edward R. Murrow at CBS News, the gold standard of broadcast journalism, and my friend and partner over the last 3 decades, the legendary Marvin Kalb.
Thank you, Mike, very much. I find it awe-inspiring to follow Mike. Not only to a stand of this sort, but anywhere in the world. I will follow him. He is a most remarkable person. You know, the question could be asked, is it possible for an old man to learn anything? And the answer is, if you host a program of this sort over 28 years, if you haven't learned anything, you shouldn't have been hosting it to begin with. And one of the great things about journalism is you ask questions. Elie Wiesel was always great at asking questions. When he did not know the answer, he would turn it around and ask it as a question. And so I have learned a lot in the last 28 years. Most important, ask a question and then listen to the answer. Because in the answer is the spark of something new and something different, perhaps even something important. For example, on the issue of democracy and its importance to us all now, because I have a feeling that many people in this audience, and I have a sense, judging by polling data, many Americans wonder whether our democracy is as strong today as it was 20 years ago or 30 years ago. And if it isn't, why isn't it? And my mind goes back to a number of conversations that I had with Murrow. This is many years ago. Murrow was known to us all because he was a great journalist and he was on television and radio. And he was extraordinary, and so you had to remember what he said. He talked a great deal about his reporting from Europe in the mid-1930s to the end of the 1930s, when he watched Germany go from being a fractured democracy into being an all-out fascist state. How could that be? And Murrow always had an interesting answer when it came to defining the concept of democracy. He would say quite often, and I was privileged to listen to this, he would say, think about the word on a plaque, democracy. Does the word itself mean anything? It only means something if you vest values into the word. If the people who use it understanding that it had a meaning. It's not just a word. How then do you define this democracy? And he said, it stands on 2 pillars. One pillar he described as a sacred judicial system. And the other is what he called a free press. And if those two pillars were firm in their place, the democracy on which they sit also was firm. But then going back to his experience in Germany, but if the judicial system begins to crack and the news organizations begin to splinter, then they are weakened, and democracy sitting on top of them equally is weakened. And that terrified Murrow. When the issue of McCarthy arose in the early 1950s, at the beginning, Murrow was troubled by it, but didn't quite know what to make of it. By 1953, he had made up his mind, and he put his team to work trying to find information to explain to the American people that what was happening with McCarthy and McCarthyism was something that is fracturing the health of our democracy. And so what is it that we do? Always, again, asking questions. He did not know the answer, but he felt it important to raise the question, hoping that someone listening would come up with an answer. Think to what Walter Cronkite said in this highlight reel. Walter very rarely wanted to take a political position. Very rarely had to push him. And that was only after he'd had 3 drinks and it was late at night. But what he said to us was very important. If the Supreme Court begins to weaken, we are in trouble. Our democracy then is in serious trouble. I saw a recent poll that said that 25% of the American people today trust the Supreme Court of the United States. 25%. Where are the other 3 out of 4 people? What is going on? Is there anything we can do? Is there anything we should do? Then keep asking yourself those questions. I asked Elie Wiesel if God were a journalist, what story would he look for? And he said, ask him. I love that answer because what Elie was saying, in effect, was that each individual had an opportunity to address supreme authority. Each individual was sovereign. Each individual in a democracy is sovereign. But does each individual use that power? Or does the individual allow forces to begin to undercut the foundations of a sacred judicial system and a strong, virile, unafraid press? What happens today when an organization like Fox is required to pay $787.5 million to Dominion? I read stories that I would truly like to believe. I really would love to believe that Fox paying so much money is going to change, that it is going to know that it's been taught a lesson, and taught that lesson it will take certain actions to be better, not to lie, not to perpetuate a lie, simply because it brings in the ratings. Do you know that the $787.5 million is 1/5 of the amount of money that Fox earns on a quarterly basis? Put that in your pipe and smoke it for a while. And do you really think that on that basis, Fox is going to flip? I doubt it. I doubt it very much. And if it retains the attitude that it has demonstrated over the last 10, 15 years. And I ought to stick in here in a little parenthesis that for 5 years, I did commentary for Fox from 2010 to 2015. And one day I went into the office and, by the way, they treated me very well. I have no complaint, whatever. But I went into the office one day and overheard a conversation having to do with the relationship of what they were going to broadcast to the audience. How many people, they raised this question, are going to listen to us if we said X as opposed to Y? And I was thinking to myself, you know, the idea, does Murrow matter? What would Murrow say if he heard that in a newsroom? Be unacceptable, obviously. And so I stand before you as an honored person, and I feel that very deeply. And I wish I had a concluding message that was ringing with optimism about the future of this country, because I love it. I love the country. It's done wonders for my family and many other families. And so, like other people, I worry about what is going to turn it around, what will make it glisten as once it did. When will it be that 3 out of 4 people trust the Supreme Court, not have questions about it? What then becomes the role of each and every one of us? We have got to do something as individuals and collectively, and then what exactly? And here I fail you all, and I apologize. I don't know the final sentence to this talk. I wish I had an upbeat, ringing voice of enthusiasm and optimism about tomorrow, but I don't. And I'd be a liar if I did. But I somehow or another, deep in my soul, retain the feelings that my father had about America when he came here in 1914, because it was the land of religious freedom and economic opportunity. And he loved this place. And he stuck that idea in us all, in the family. And he was a good man with good judgment. And if Pop could see that in this country back then, maybe I ought to see it in this country right now. So let's all, hip, hip, hooray, move on and do good things. Thank you all so very much.
Thank you so much, Marvin. After 28 years, I'm still learning things from you. Come back. Let's start again. Now, before we break here, I'm looking at this crowd. This is a huge crowd. Where'd you all come from? Wow. But before we break for cake, we have one unscripted special presentation to make, and I call President Eileen O'Reilly back to the podium.
Thank you for that talk. I just want to assure you that we will continue fighting the fight We work with a lot of young journalists here at the Press Club, and they bring me great hope and optimism for the future. So, okay, for our unscripted part. So John Cosgrove was a significant past president of the National Press Club, serving in 1961 and boosting the club until he was approaching 100 years old. The Board of Governors created the Cosgrove Award to recognize past presidents who actively served the club past their time in office. The award is usually given at the end of the year if there is a deserving past president. But I like to mix things up a little bit sometimes. And we wanted to present it today because we have an exceptional candidate already who is here with his entire family. Will Mike Freedman please join me up here? Mike, you served as president during perhaps the most tumultuous year in club history, as you helped us turn on a dime to keep the club active, even as it was closed to in-person events due to the pandemic. For that alone, you deserve our gratitude. I was on the board at that time, and you were an amazing leader who led with grace, poise, and determination to keep the club alive. But after leaving office, you never skipped a beat. You produced 2 more Kalb Reports and organized this wonderful reception to mark the series finale after 28 years. You also have arranged funding for the permanent archives of the series, so its legacy is always available to students and scholars. While you were president, you came up with the idea of the club producing its own radio show based on the Christmas classic, It's a Wonderful Life. The first one was done by Zoom with 19 members playing 43 roles. The next year, after leaving office, you gathered the cast in the Broadcast Operations Center during your brief lull in the pandemic to professionally record the program. Then you convinced CBS Radio to play it during the holiday season. It was met with such acclaim that this past Christmas, CBS reprised it, and it is headed toward being a CBS Radio holiday tradition. You continue to serve on the board of the National Press Club Journalism Institute, our nonprofit affiliate, where your voice has been a very important one. There, you've also been working with the executive director, the president, and Casey Muro, Edward Muro's son, to get funding for a new series of journalism ethics programs under the title, Why Muro Matters. And speaking of Muro, during your presidency, you arranged for Casey to loan the iconic microphone his father used while broadcasting during World War II, displaying it on a special case in the hallway just outside the lobby. When Casey Muro asked for it back with the intention of selling it, you personally bought it, kept it on loan from the Freedman family through last December, sharing its significance with the whole club and its guests. You also have stayed an active member on the History and Heritage Committee and the broadcasting and podcast teams. And perhaps most importantly, at least to me personally, is that you served as an essential mentor, advisor, and a friend to the 3 presidents who succeeded you, Lisa Matthews, Jen Judson, and myself, as well as to Bill McCarran and the club staff. I displayed the Kermit mug you gave me, by the way, with your advice to enjoy every single day. And it reminds me of my priorities and makes me smile every single time I see it. For all these reasons and more, I'm very happy to give you the Cosgrove Award to acknowledge and thank you for your continuing leadership and volunteerism at the National Press Club and National Press Club Journalism Institute. You inspire all of us to do more every day. Thank you.
And now, everyone, it's cake time. Meet you all in the back. Now, what can I do to help you guys?